there's a little taste of how cool this car actually is. But before I get into all that, welcome everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, welcome to Figure It Outy. My name is Steve. Typically here you'll find me working on my S4, A4, now the S8. And I do modifications and sort of product and tool reviews from time to time. So if you're new, please do subscribe to the channel and like this video and follow me along the journey with this new build. So here's the background on the car because there is no big master YouTube plan here. Truly, I was just needing a winter car. You guys probably know from watching the channel that I have the S4 and I'm not going to winter drive it anymore. And it was already back in sort of like the late summer that I knew I better start looking for a winter car. That being said, I am in Alberta and we have terrible roads, extremely cold, lots of snow. They do use a salt solution on the roads too, so you have to know that anything you put on the roads in the winter is very likely going to get rusted and significantly damaged over time. So you have to put some thought into what the value and the type of car is actually going to be that's going to get you through those winter months. Now I know a lot of you watching who might be, 40 years old and older at this point in 2022 are probably looking at the car going, hell yeah, that's the car from Ronin, so sweet. And yeah, thank you, I agree, but I don't have that sentimental value attached to it. That's not the main reason why I bought this car. I do love the fact that it's an Audi and I can do some fun YouTube things here, but what really got me as an Albertan and a Canadian is that this thing has aluminum body construction, and that is going to negate all the problems I just said about the winters here. And I'm seriously not joking, you gotta check out these wheel wells. The wheel well of an Audi is usually an absolute train wreck of rust, but these things are perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. There isn't a spot of rust anywhere on this car, unlike my beloved S4, which really kind of kills me because that car is 4-5 years newer and it's in way worse shape. I should say, my intention isn't to only drive this car in the winter. This is going to be a 4-season car, and it's going to kind of fill in a gap that I have against the S4's utility, because the S4 is really now becoming my modified car. It's comfortable, but not super comfortable. I've gone on some long road trips with it, but it wasn't ideal. Also, the gas mileage is getting kind of bad. But this car is really going to be my rain and winter and a little bit cold out and needing to drive a backseat full of people to a different city kind of car. Because after all, just look at this thing. Look at the length and the proportions. This is 17 feet long. That is over a foot longer, I think, than the B7 S4. I mean, in the same space, I can get a car and a snowblower, and that is what gives you that quintessential Audi Autobahn cruiser of the era. And just look at the styling, so cool. I mean, you could have an executive in the back, driver in the front, and the bumpers, they used to be sort of square and notchy in the era just before it, but this is round and shaved and tucked. Such a cool design. Let me talk about the D2 chassis for a second, because I'll bet you have not seen one of these S8s in person recently or maybe ever. There were tens of thousands of them sold in North America before, and actually, funnily enough, this is an original Canadian car sold in Alberta, just happened to travel all the way across the country until I just brought it back. And of course, there were many more sold in Europe, and I can tell because I've been on eBay Germany already, there are still plentiful parts over there available, which is not the case over here at all. If you're an American watching this, I have no doubt you could jump on Craigslist or something like that, probably Facebook, and find a few of these around for sale, or you'll have to jump on Bring a Trailer. Right now, my observation is that you can get a okay shaped one with meh miles on it for maybe around the $10,000 mark, maybe a little bit less than that. But if you want a nice one, or if you want one that's been 6-speed swapped, be prepared to spend, I'd say $13,000, $15,000, up to $30,000, depending on how rare the spec is, to get your hands on one of these. For me, however, my options were extremely limited. There are usually one, if any, for sale in Canada at any given time. There was only one other one when I was searching, and that person wanted 40 grand Canadian for it. Granted, it was a original 40,000 kilometer car and it was in great shape, but that was way outside of my price range. And I found this old girl way out in New Brunswick, and I got it for $66.50 Canadian, which is about $4,900 US today. And then I shipped it all the way back here to the prairies in Edmonton, which is basically the equivalent of sending a car from Maine to Montana. And that cost me another about 2,200 bucks Canadian. So I'm into this thing for, give or take, because I also had to pay some GST on it, about $9,000. So allow me to show you what my $9,000 Canadian got me, because some of it is amazing and some of it is not so amazing. Let's start with the positives, and one big one is actually kind of a secret. This is Ming Blue is the color. It's metallic. It's not a rare color, but it kind of works really well because of the fact that there are black lower valences for the side skirts, rear bumper, believe me when I say that, and the front one here you can see sort of really plainly, it's dark. It's not a plastic, but it is a black color. That's the case for all of the S8s of this generation. Now, when you have a darker color car like mine, it blends in really well. You know, this looks really natural. You might not be fooled to think that this is body color, but it looks okay. Now check out some of these pictures of other cars. Silver, champagne, some of the other ones that are available. Doesn't look so great when they're matched up against that black. Another thing that sucked me into this car was the fact that it had the original Avis wheels on it. You've probably seen these since then on things like the B6 S4. They were probably on other Audis too, but this looks so right on this car. And if you kind of look behind them, this car came with huge calipers. I think these are 6 pots, they're Brembos. These things are even bigger than the front brakes on my S4. Now another positive, not unique to this car, but just on the S8s in general, are the aluminum side mirrors, and they are real deal aluminum, not the plastic caps that I happen to have on my S4. But what's really cool about the design of this generation is how huge the side view mirror is. It looks really cool when you're driving the car because it just looks like a sliver of the aluminum poking out, and you have this big mirror, but this is just such a timeless part of the original S cars. Now this car is lucky to have a bit of a rare feature on it too, and that is the solar roof panel. That's what these are, and it's kind of cool because what it does is it powers, even when the car is off, the blower motor in the cabin. And what it's meant to do is in the summer, it's meant to keep air circulating in the car and pull some of that leftover coolness that's sitting in the, I think the evaporator, right? Under the dashboard for the AC system, and try to keep the car inside a little bit cooler longer until you get back. And then the opposite is true in the winter. It keeps the fan blowing to keep some of the heat circulating in the car, so if you come back, you're a little bit warmer than you would have been. Another awesome part of all of these S8s is signified by this badge right here. This says the Audi Space Frame. And that is in reference to the all aluminum body construction. And I'm not just talking about the panels themselves, it's talking about the frame. It is a single piece aluminum construction frame, which is meant to make the car really light. And that helped in 2 different ways. One, they were competing Audi very much with BMW and Mercedes at the time for their big, powerful sedan. And truthfully, it was not as fast and in some ways not as nice as some of their competitors, so they had to beat them in performance on weight savings. And the 1-2 punch on that performance bump was the weight savings of the frame versus the fact that this guy came with the big old 4.2 liter V8 that is basically the father of the V8 that we have in the B6 and B7 S4. And this power plant really is the big positive on my list here. Being a later production car post facelift, it does have a little bit more power, so it's got about 360 horsepower at the crank and around 320 foot-pounds of torque. And you can really feel it. Combined with the light weight of the car, it actually does feel pretty strong. Faster than you would think, I guarantee it. And that's because it's light by today's standards. Back in the day it was the heavy one, but this thing is actually still pretty light, and that's why the space frame comes into play and is so important. What's kind of funny I noticed, and a nice little benefit, is how wide the doors open. It's almost 90 degrees, sort of like one extra clunk than you normally see on a car. And just look at the quality of the interior. This is genuine Alcantara from back in the 2000s. Oh, the wood burl is really great. And you'll notice that the dash, it's actually leather. This is not plastic. It is leather stitched and looks so good. The coolest part of this particular car is that it's an all black interior. That isn't a given for a spec of the cars. You could have had different colors of leather and interior colors, but this one is fully murdered out. It looks really good. The only downside is that I don't have the sport seats. These are considered comfort seats, although it still has some really nice bolstering in it, and the car is very comfortable. This isn't an option just on my car. I believe this was standard, but I'm going to take it as a win that all of my electronics work, including this rear shade. Watch what happens when I hit this button. How sweet is that? Even though there's a million things on the inside I want to show you, just to keep the video a bit shorter, I just had to point out how hilarious it is that there's 2 armrests, because that's how big and wide this car is. And how sweet is it that each person gets to put their arm on something. There is a little bit of irony though, because we all know how much these things break on a bunch of other Audis. And now you gotta run the risk of breaking 2. Anyways, it's still pretty sweet. And that is pretty much the end of the list of positives, because the big downside is this car has 280,000 kilometers on it. As far as I can tell from my Carfax reports and very vague service history, I think I'm the 7th owner of this car, and I have no records of any maintenance pretty much at all. I have no idea what's been done to this car, honestly. And just by looking at the engine bay, it is more or less trashed from every type of leak you could think of. Coolant, valve covers are definitely gone. There's corrosion everywhere. An animal was absolutely living in the airbox, and I'm gonna need to do a lot of work in here. And to quantify all these issues, I give you the new project board. I don't expect you to be able to read this, but what I've done here is pulled all the trouble codes off the computer, and there's a real nice laundry list here, and it varies from different power issues in the engine. Pretty sure the cats are completely blown out. There are issues with the airbags that I'm gonna need to look at. Kind of everything. There's the level issues on the headlight, rear sensors for parking assist isn't working. And outside of things that you can be able to sense on the computer, we also have mechanical issues that I just know are the case as well. So we have things like the parking brake is stuck, and there is a major fueling issue on the car right now. It can barely start. Sometimes it's a bit hit or miss. And we have the intake manifold arms that are completely exploded, which is actually a pretty common problem on these older cars where they have two different actuators, but the little arms here are completely trashed. I've temporarily zip tied the manifold flaps into their like idle state, but we're gonna have to deal with that. And honestly, there's just other stuff too. The transmission doesn't like to shift into its final gear very well. I'm gonna need to go entirely through this car. Now here is my mountain for this project. Unlike the S4, where I was just trying to make it run really well and go through things to make myself comfortable with the car, that is not the case here. This is the case. What we're looking at is 16 pages of double-sided printing of what's referred to as the Alberta Out-of-Province Inspection Checklist. Now, in many places in the world, I'm sure you can buy a car from wherever you want in your country, bring it to your home, province, state, whatever, and you can go ahead and insure and register your car. That is not the case in Alberta. Alberta wants you to inspect very thoroughly every car, no matter if it was originally sold in the province or not, before it can be registered. So it has to go through a many point inspection, and it has to meet all criteria. You need a stamp of approval before you can take it and get the car registered and actually drive it legally. And just one of the items on the list is that the computer cannot be storing any DTCs. So I need to fix literally this entire list and other things before I can even attempt to get this thing inspected. So other than the fact that I have probably purchased a car here that I won't be able to winter drive until the winter of 2023, I'm gonna have to start working through this list in the hopes of having it roadworthy. Now I have learned a lot from working on the S4 that I feel like is gonna give me a big leg up in this project because the power plants are very similar. I actually feel really comfortable looking at the engine bay here about what's kind of going on. I know how to jump into it. But what I've learned is that you should really start with the compression test. So that's what I'm gonna do. No, I did not get one in my pre-purchase inspection. Usually you have to pay more for a leak down or compression test or anything like that. And I didn't do it. I jumped at the chance of owning the car in general, and I was okay with the fact that if something was critically wrong with the car, that I would have to deal with it when it got home. So let's see if this thing is even worth working on before we go chasing down these other problems. I am ready to test. I have pulled the plugs and packs. I've got the fuse in the passenger footwell taken out for the fuel pump. And then I've got my battery out in the trunk all charged up. And I just wanted to show you kind of what came out of here. So we have the old style packs. I think they're called ICMs, which is a departure from, I guess, the FSI style ones that you're probably more familiar with. I am too, but not that I really know what to look for if these go bad, but you know, they're not cracked. The condition looks good. I don't think there's much of a concern there. When I was looking at all the plugs, and I know this won't be clear in the GoPro, but all of the posts and electrodes seemed okay. Nothing that I think is out of the ordinary. But what I did notice is that this back one, I think it's cylinder 7, it's passenger side towards the firewall, that plug came out covered in oil. So I don't know if that is a failing head gasket on that side. I don't think it's going to be the valve cover gasket responsible for something like that, but let's just see where it goes with the numbers here. This is one of those fantastic moments I'd love to do on the channel where I get to tell you about how I screwed up something in the past, and then I fixed it, and I give you that information now so you don't have to make my same mistake. So when it comes to compression testing, I highly suggest you buy one of these. This is an extension for your compression testing tool, and the purpose of that is to avoid doing what I did. So typically I would have taken my hose like this, and you just thread it down into the hole, into the threads. And the problem is you're twisting against the hose itself, right? And then it seized. One time it actually seized into the hole, and I was twisting against the hose and I thought I was gonna rip it right out of here. And the point is I had no leverage. This was the incorrect way to do it. But what you need to do is buy one of these that has a handle on top of it. So first you put this down into the spark plug hole, you thread that by hand, and then there's just a connection right on the end that will hook up straight to your compression testing tool. For all the heartache that this will save you, it's well worth the money. I paid about 40 bucks Canadian for it, which is like 33 cents American these days. I got it on Amazon, it's the OTC brand, but there's lots on there to choose from, but I've put the link to this item in the description of the video. Just to state the facts, we're gonna do a dry compression test, and last time I did this, you guys let me know about it. Some things were wrong, so throttle wide open, obviously no plugs or coils are in the hole, so very freely spinning compression, and I'll do about 10 cranks per cylinder. $168. $76. Another little bit low, 156 again. Ooh, looky here. The oil is no huge deal. Now that I look at it a little bit closer, we can see that the valve cover gaskets that go around the spark plug sort of cylinders here, it's these rubber rings that go seriously like right in these holes. I can see the oil is seeping out of here, so no biggie, it's just a valve cover gasket. What? Another 156. All right. Okay, we got lots of good news. So looking at the compression results, what we're seeing is that on the passenger side, so I think it's bank 2, we're all smack dab pretty much at the same spot. I was freaking out. I saw 3 156s there and I was like, is my gauge right? But no, those are the real numbers. So we're in the mid 150s, and then on the driver's side, bank 1 is, well, you can see sort of high around 170 up to 176. And the great news is that 156 is just about 10% of our highest number, 176, which means that generally speaking, we've got pretty good compression. So that is just one data point. It's an encouraging sign, but doesn't necessarily mean the engine is healthy. But I'm going to find out, because I learned something very valuable in the S4 project, which is don't mess around and trying to work in the engine bay around a motor in the front and the back and the side and from underneath. Just pull the thing out. Just save yourself time, pull it out right away if you're going to go to the extent that I'm going to go to, which is refreshing kind of everything. I think I'm going to stop just short of actually rebuilding the engine, but I do intend to actually completely disassemble it to take a look at the condition, and I'll make some decisions from there. So no dicking around in this one, we're going straight in right off the bat. The other great news is that the car, as of like 2 minutes ago, did run. Don't ask me how. I was sort of banging around on the fuel pump back there. There is one very corroded fuel line. It's not leaking. I don't think that's the problem, but it just sort of comes to life as it wants to, and that's fine. I'm going to take advantage of that because I am going to pull the engine on the next episode of this series here. But first, I have looked inside of the head, right under the oil cap here, and it's so tarnished. It's really, really dirty. More dirty than any car I've ever worked on before. And instead of just pouring some of that sludge out and having to clean all the components inside, I'm just going to try to do myself a favor here and do what I always do and run a bottle of Liqui Moly's engine flush product through it. So I'm going to get the car going here. I'm going to drain out just a titch of oil to start with so that there's some capacity in the system. Dump the can in, let it run for 10-15 minutes, then drain the whole thing. And that's going to take us to the next episode. just for fun. I've also found some weird things on the car, which is not surprising, but check out the belly pan that someone hand built for this car. It is a sign. Someone took a sign. I feel like I should know what this emblem is, but I just can't quite place it. And they made themselves a belly pan and screwed it in with a bunch of not the same size bolts up into some fasteners under the car. Another thing that totally threw me for a loop here that I need to figure out is that the car is so long that my quick jacks don't work. They're not long enough to reach the actual jack points there. And I am going to need to figure something out because this car also doesn't have a pinch weld on it. The way I was able to pick it up was not something that I'm super proud of so far. I mean, it's being held up, but I don't feel super safe working really hard under the car right now, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. But QuickJack also makes an extension for the SLX series like what I have. I have the 5000, but it only gives you 6 extra inches, which is not even close to what I need. So I might have to do some custom fabrication here. I don't know, we'll see. The journey has officially begun with this work. And like I said, I'm gonna dive really deep, really fast. My objective is to avoid what I did on the S4, because I really wasn't honest with myself in that project. I figured, oh, I just have this one problem, I'm gonna fix this one thing. And then me being me, I can't help myself when I notice something else is wrong. I end up fixing that. This time, I know I'm gonna get way off track, and that's okay. But really what I want to avoid is having to order multiple rounds of parts from the States that are going to cost me extra amounts of shipping and duties and all that stuff. I want to find all the things that I need to buy as soon as I can and just do one big order. So that's why we're going way faster than last project. So that's it for this episode. What I'm going to try to do is get these episodes out a little quicker than I did last time. Last time was like a month or so. I'm going to try to do a couple of weeks at a time, not do such long, intensive episodes. Let's just kind of keep things moving here for your entertainment purposes. So next time we catch up, I will be doing all the work to pull this front end apart and get ready to pull the engine and trans together, which is the first time I've ever done something like that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. Please like this video. And again, I am new to the S8, and if you have an old A8 or an S8, let me know in the comments, what adventures have you been through? What'd you do? What should I be looking for as I move through the next couple of months of work here? Let me know. See you next time.